Janet is a mythic brawler and was the Season 12 Brawl Pass brawler, released in April 2022 during the Stunt Show update. Naturally, she's part of the Stunt Show trio of brawlers, but while Janet's Uncle Stu is so loved by the community, Janet does not receive that same treatment as seen by her playmates. Let's take a look as to why. I want to specify that this video does not intend to insult your main, or whoever you play, unless your main is Edgar. This video simply serves as an explanation as to why a few brawlers are not played, and who knows, it might sway people to your main side. Before analyzing her gameplay to find the main reasons for her disapproval, I'd like to talk about other factors that may have led to her general unpopularity in context. Gameplay is usually the most important factor behind a brawler's success or failure in play rates, as that is the one thing that remains constant through the sea of buffs and nerfs. First, the time period. She was released in April 2022, which immediately raises some red flags. 2022 was a rough year for Brawl in general, as that was the year when Brawl's economy was at its worst. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Gears 1.0, the first system brought a very confusing system of gear scraps, gear tokens, and different gear levels. It's irrelevant for our purposes, but the system was a mess, and the devs realized this. This led to lower play rates of the game itself, all throughout the majority of 2022. After all, no one wants to play a game that actively discourages you from progressing, right? April of that year wasn't anything special either. For a frame of reference, let's consider the most recent update 2 years after, which introduced mutations. Mutations are a temporary event, which means they do not affect progression at all, but the hype around the event still has the potential to bring more people to the game. More people in the game naturally leads to more interest around the brawlers being released. April 2022, however, had no redeeming qualities. Brawlers appear on the play rate chart in order either because of their release conditions or despite their release conditions, and Janet was definitely part of the latter. In general, the conditions around the release of the brawler heavily affect how loved they are. Edgar was released for free in December of 2020, so people remember the Edgar-pocalypse. These memories tend to stick in the heads of players, which leads to them remembering Edgar more, playing him more, and increasing his play rates. Of course, everyone likes Edgar because of his game mechanics leading to his crazy team-wipe plays, but the Edgar-pocalypse definitely played a notable role in how well perceived he was, compared to someone like Stu who is loved, but less so because Power League wasn't a very notable change for casual players, and he required 10k trophies to unlock. Again, this isn't the full story, because Edgar and Stu are very different brawlers, and I'd argue that Edgar's gameplay is a very big reason as to why he is so loved. It is a piece of the puzzle, though, and in order to complete the puzzle, you can't lose the pieces. Focusing on Janet, a lower play rate of the game itself meant that her release only realistically affected a small percentage of players today. Couple that with the relative mediocrity of the Stunt Show update and 2022 updates in general, and you can see why Janet isn't really played a lot. Secondly, character design, and this is pretty brief. Janet's not the most interesting character. She has an amazing and unique backstory as an aspiring pop star that still needs to take care of her little sister and protect her from harm, but most people wouldn't pick said pop star Janet over a brooding gangster like Crow, or a home baker that has a secret dark past like Piper. Same reason why brawlers like Lou and Eve also have lower play rates. No one's interested in an ice cream vendor or an alien mother when you have an energy drink party bot to choose from. Janet isn't an exception to these rules. Third, balance changes, again, pretty brief. Janet was dominating the S tier ever since her release, but in June 2023, she got absolutely massacred with nerfs and landed in the F tier. While she was strong on release, and that contributed to her above-average play rates during that time as it usually does, her nerfs made a lot of people put her down and never pick her up again. Those who did not know about the nerfs picked up Janet and immediately threw her aside, as she felt very weak. Again, even before that though, she still only had above-average play rates, so I don't imagine this would have contributed too much to her relative popularity. Finally, we end with the gameplay design. Again, this is the most important part of the analysis. Gameplay is the one thing that stays relatively constant throughout her years. Unless you count Meg, but Janet's no Meg. And honestly, Janet's pretty unique. Her main attack is an attack that gets longer and thinner as you hold it, and her super lets her fly for a few seconds, dropping bombs on the ground periodically. I can summarize her kit in a single sentence, but that's largely due to how Brawl is optimized to be as easy to pick up as possible. Her gadgets are either dropping a turret that zones in a wide radius or lets her escape with an attack, and her star powers are either charging her main attack faster or revealing bushes while using her super. A main attack that you have the viable option to either hold or spam hasn't really been done before, and this gives her really unique gameplay at any of her ranges. For reference, the other brawlers with charge attacks, Angelo and Hank, don't really have the ability to spam attacks, as their cooldown and low damage holds them back. Amber can theoretically burst at close range, but it's quite easy to dodge her attacks at close range, while Janet's attack starts off wide, so hitting targets close to her is not a problem. Additionally, Amber has no escape tools, while Janet has her super and second gadget. Wait, this ability to fight at all ranges had to be balanced somehow, right? Well, Janet's versatility comes at the cost of artificially increasing her unload speed at longer ranges. So if she decides to play at a long range, she'll have to hold down her attack for longer, which gives enemies more room to heal up while she is attacking them. This weakness is reduced by her first star power, so she has burst in case a tank approaches her, but she can also compete with longer range brawlers at their ranges. She doesn't have too much burst, though, as her attacks deal relatively little damage, and she can't compete as well with longer range brawlers because of both the long unload speed and the fact that she does not match them at 10 tiles of range. This gives her the designation of a defensive generalist brawler. Now, I won't go too deep into generalist and specialist classifications since I already did that in the Ruffs video, which you should definitely check out, but basically, defensive generalists have even matchups with most brawlers, and defensive specialists win badly against some and lose badly against some. Janet doesn't counter all classes, but she plays even into most of them, and that's what makes her great. Just like Ruffs, though, this makes her playstyle slow and tactical compared to a lot of well-loved brawlers, because you always have to be careful in an even matchup. Again, I will not touch on this much, and if you're interested in that you can check out the Ruffs video, but tactical playstyles lead to low play rates, and aggressive playstyles lead to high play rates. However, unlike Ruffs, she's not an offensive generalist, meaning she only really plays one role on a team. You'd think that'd be better for Janet, as she has the potential to be really good at that one thing, so players can potentially be attracted to that one good thing. And that is true. It's what carried her competitive presence while she was good. Unfortunately, however, that one good thing turns out to be something most players do not care about. See, Janet specializes in zoning. Not attack damage, not speed, but zoning. Zoning is the act of clearing out areas of the map that the enemy might be in, basically scouting them out so that you can kill them easily. Janet's a pro at this, and she's made even better by the fact that she's a marksman. Since no other marksman has a piercing attack without the use of gadgets or star powers, Janet basically has zero competition in her field, not even with Mandy, her zoner marksman counterpart. Her super lets her punish retreating enemies who might take cover by taking them out with chip damage from her rockets, all while staying in the air. Her first gadget lets her drop a turret that constantly chips enemies in a wide radius, and her attack lets her take out spawnables with ease. The problem is that with this insanely powerful role, Janet had to be balanced somehow, and that nerf came in the form of her attack damage and attack range. Janet deals very mediocre damage for a marksman. While others deal around 2,000 to 3,000 damage with their attacks, Janet is stuck with a measly 1,600. And again, her attack range, while quite long, is not 10 tiles like the other marksmen. This means she doesn't share their niche in bounty, among other things. Well, let's talk about those other things. And let's use Piper as a comparison tool, since she's near the top of the play rate chart. In terms of damage, Piper blows Janet out of the park with her 3,400 damage per shot at max range. She does deal less damage at shorter ranges, but she's Piper. She rarely gets to short range on her good maps. Piper also has the 10-tile range that Janet does not have. And in return, Janet has a huge mechanical advantage over her, with her crazy zoning and much better escape potential with her super and second gadget. Notice how Piper takes the lead in more noticeable and rewarded aspects of the game, like attack damage and range, which is just the capacity to deal even more damage. Janet takes the lead in more hidden aspects like the ability to push back enemies and keep them pushed back, but no one cares about that when they see big damage numbers and huge range. The star player mechanic also rewards this more than hidden aspects of the match like pushing enemies back. And star player on a brawler incentivizes people to keep trying to perfect that brawler. Like I mentioned before, Piper has an S-tier niche in bounty that Janet doesn't have, because Janet's kit is designed to perform well in all game modes. Piper is one of the best picks in bounty because of her mechanics, so it's easier to do well with her in those modes. She has an escape super too, well, escape danger, and her main attack does best at a range, which bounty specializes in. Since Piper has less competition, she can do better and as a result perform more pop-off plays than someone like Janet in that mode. And since Janet's strengths are evenly distributed so as to be decent in every game mode, she's always going to have competition and struggle in those game modes. Hence, the tactical playstyle. There's also the fact about how both have their damages distributed. Piper has inaccurate shots with a low reload but high damage, while Janet has more accurate shots, a faster reload, but lower damage. In psychology, there's a phenomenon known as the peak end effect. How the peak of the match went and how the end of the match went will contribute heavily towards player enjoyment. Assuming identical matches with Piper and Janet where both end with a win and thus the end enjoyment is the same, we can take a look at each of their peaks. Piper has greater attack damage in a vacuum, but her capacity to hit those shots is very limited. So those peaks where you pop off with her get stronger and more rare. And in a game of chance, when you don't know when the next big pop-off play will happen, you crave it more often. This is why legendary star drops are so craved. Meanwhile, Janet has lower attack damage. Her peaks are more frequent but weaker. Think, an epic drop. Which one would you be more excited for? All of these comparisons lead to the conclusion that Janet has unique specializations, but her specializations aren't things that most people look at or care about when they play a match, so she ends up being thrown to the wayside in favor of other brawlers. Her nerf, while deserved, landed her in the bottom 5 player rates of all brawlers as of May 2024. Nonetheless, Janet is still a unique brawler who has hidden strengths that can dominate the match if the enemy's not careful. And that's fine. Not every brawler has to have huge damage or huge range or kill enemies quickly, because that would be a horrible meta to play in. Personally, I would hate it if every meta was like the December 2023 meta. But that's just my take. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Watch this video, or this playlist, or join the Discord server.